Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Lee Rhiannon. Today we have a very special show for you as I show all Greens voters how to educate farmers about the alternatives to their evil live export trade.
Good evening, Lee.
Now you do realize it is time to end this cruel trade.
What would you say is cruel about it, Lee?
Where do I start? The boats are cruel, the animals are crammed into dark holds and thousands of them die before they even reach the country they are going to.
Have you ever been on a live export boat? Or are you just regurgitating the propaganda put out by animal rights activists? Animals on live export boats are fed 3 times a day and have their waters cleaned at least twice a day. They always have their decks illuminated. The animals are never kept in the dark or crammed in, as they have to be able to reach food and water, without which they would surely die before reaching their destinations. Last year 99.39% of all the animals that boarded live export vessels survived the journey.
But didn't 20,000 animals die? Thought still so many animals.
Compared to what? In the 2010 to 2011 financial year, the RSPCA euthanized 57% of all the cats they took in. That's over 37,000 cats. They also euthanized 19,000 dogs. Together that's nearly 3 times the amount of animals that died on live export vessels. You're arguing about 20,000 out of 3.3 million? That's less than 0.7%.
I don't care, 0.7% is barbaric. It is not acceptable.
Even when you are comparing it to the alternative. There are plenty of other nations ready to take our place with their own animals. Most other countries that export live animals are not required to carry vets or stockmen on their vessels, nor are they required to report how many animals die in transit. Australia has some of the highest live export standards in the world, but if we ban live export, we can easily be replaced by countries like Brazil who have inferior standards to our own. A Brazilian ship headed for Egypt in March lost nearly 60% of the animals it was carrying. You're dreaming if you think other countries are going to care more about animal welfare than Australia does.
It is not a good enough argument to just say someone else will do it if we don't.
I thought you were against animal cruelty, Lee. You seem very accepting of cruelty when it is perpetrated on cattle and sheep from other countries. If we pull out of the live export market and the cruelty continues on animals from other countries, we have achieved nothing. How about we put our energy into using live export to lift animal welfare standards in other countries like Lynn White has done in Jordan and the live export industry has done in Indonesia?
There's no real reason to lift animal welfare standards in other countries when we can create jobs here by just putting these animals through Australian meatworks and export box meat.
Lee, that is not a viable alternative.
Yes, it is. We have a report to prove it.
What does your report say about the sheep exports from Western Australia?
Our report proves that we have the capacity to slaughter an extra 1 to 1.5 million sheep within 12 months of banning live export, and that we can even slaughter 6 million head of sheep a year in Western Australia if we bring in some foreign workers to do the work.
So how many Australian jobs do we create if we bring in foreign workers to do all the work in our meatworks?
The jobs will still be in Australia, so they count as Australian jobs. The Meatworkers Union says that we have lost 40,000 jobs and 150 meatworks have closed since live export began.
I think you will find industrial action from the Meatworkers Union, and their demands for high wages have closed more meatworks than competition from live export ever has. Labor costs are so high in Australia that it costs twice as much to slaughter a cow here than it does in America. If we have the capacity to slaughter so many extra sheep, why did the sheep price drop 40% when live exporters were not buying sheep in September?
Our report says that farmers have to lower the cost of production.
By 40%. How do you propose farmers cut their cost of production by 40%? Would you be able to survive if you had to take a 40% pay cut, Lee?
Farmers make plenty of money. Live Export is all about greed.
Lee, you are being childish. What would happen to our rural communities if the farmers lost nearly half of their income?
In their hearts they would know that by banning live export we have sent a message.
Which message is that, Lee? The message that you condone animal cruelty if it is perpetrated on animals from other nations, or that you can prove anything if you can pay an economist to twist it into a report? Or are you trying to send a message that the Greens count anyone who doesn't live in a city as a second-class citizen?
That's all we have time for tonight. Remember, Greens voters, always try to end a conversation before you completely lose your credibility, and if you cannot fool anybody, just mindlessly shout ban live export.